When it starts recording. That's my delay.
And we're back. We're going to go on to item number 6. This is a public hearing, community plan, major amendment, and village plan 2 for the crossing located at the southeast corner of Market Street and Pioneer Crossing. Thane Smith is the applicant, and we're going to turn the time over to our director, Dave Stroud, for the presentation.
Yeah, this request is 2 parts. One is to amend the existing community plan, and the second part is to look at and recommend approval, is our recommendation, of the village plan 2. As you know, in the community plan, or excuse me, the district area plan, projects come through as a community plan, then a village plan. And we're having a little trouble with the keyboard. Again, just the property here. Everyone knows where this is located at, the whole Smith's Marketplace Complex. The current community plan, I believe, has 6 phases. This is one of the amendments here, but just to show you where the phase lines are now. Phase 1 contains the Smiths, some of the outbuildings that they're still under construction, a few more buildings coming out in phase 1. The village plan you look at tonight will be for phase 2. Again, the development standards are governed through the district area plan, which then is implemented through the planned community zone. Then to develop in the planned community zone, you come through for a community plan on a kind of a wide scale, then you break that down in a finer scale with a village plan. Some of the things you want to discuss tonight, which we think are pertinent, would be the building elevations, the signs. They are proposing to change to the building height, the pedestrian connectivity within the village plan, and then the interior connectivity between some of the outbuilding parcels. Don't know if we need to run through these word for word, but it's just some of the changes that they're looking at. Again, the phase change, they'd like to add additional uses within the community plan. The lot breakdown, of course, is you're adding buildings, you're adding square footage. You just need to change those tables as more formalities for those requirements. The big one here, though, would be structure go to 125 feet. The current requirement now is 50 feet. That one bullet point added to the development approval process, the ability, that's already in the planned community zone, so that one does not really need to apply at this point. Again, they're adding some pictures of the benches that are there that are already installed that have the swoop. Removing the requirement to have pedestrian walkways in the parking lot if the rows of parking stalls run parallel. So if you recall now, you look at Smith's, the parking rows are perpendicular to the storefront of Smith's. So you have the concrete sidewalks between some of the parking rows, which is a nice thing to have. However, the way this building is going to be, the Fat Cats building is going to be oriented on the property, that doesn't make sense where the parking stalls need to run parallel to the building front. So for the village plan too, they'd like to remove that. And of course, as we're adding utilities, we're adding transportation areas, we need to change the utility map and the transportation plan. Village Plan 2 then has the sign design standards, which are different than what are in there right now. They would like to incorporate ones with LED messages. There are some different architectural elevations, which we'll take a look at. And then, of course, utility, transportation, landscaping plans will then be site-specific to the Village Plan 2. One thing we have to look at here is the pedestrian connectivity. This is out of the plan right now, which identifies walkways and trails. The one thing we've identified as staff is that the road coming in along, get the mouse to work here, road coming in along the north side of Smith's, if pedestrians were to come up here, how would they get to Fat Cats, for instance? The red lines are indicated where we need to have, in this area, some sort of pedestrian crosswalk to get the pedestrians. Otherwise, they got to walk clear around to the perimeter and then back in. So that would be adding those at some point. There would be some traffic regulation that would apply where that could be located, but there needs to be some sort of pedestrian connectivity right there on each side of the roundabout. Within the village plan, they have various different paths identified and how they could potentially develop. One thing that's lacking on those paths is there's no connection between adjacent paths. So you couldn't go from one to the other, you have to go back out in the street and then come back in. And we want to see that interior access between these paths. So we think that there needs to be some connectivity between those, and that would then be amended to show the connectivity between these various outbuildings, outpaths. The sign legend you see here, as far as the signs go for the Fat Cats, which you can see right here, this red dot, this would be the only sign they're looking at. The other signs would be utilized as other businesses come in to utilize the area there. The red would be a pylon sign, so Fat Cats would occupy this pylon sign here. This red dot here, according to the applicant, most likely be for if they can get some larger retail tent or whatever, larger user, they would then utilize that pylon sign there. As far as the Fat Cats goes, it would just be this red dot there for a pylon sign. This is the current sign along Redwood Road right now. The applicant has proposed to remove the 2 tenant boxes you see there and replace with an LED message board. This is the sign here that would then go along Pioneer Crossing, again with that red dot that I identified for you. Again, the LED message board, that is a new concept here in the city. It's been brought up in the past, but they'll explain further the need there, why they think they need this sign for this particular use. Then get into the elevations of Fat Cats. We did get some revised changes today. I did email to everybody today. I hope you got all of that. So this is what we're looking at here. And of course, the numbers and letters here identify materials, which will be on the last slide if you want to get into what the more detail what the materials are. So this will be the elevation to the west, the main entrance, as you can see here, under the Fat Cat sign. The elevations to the south, we met with the applicant yesterday, talked about some changes. They did revise the elevations, which are then what you see here. The west elevation, or excuse me, the elevation here, this is what you look at. This would be the east, actually, not the west. What you'd see coming up by the roundabout on behind Smith's. And then the north elevation. And the materials, various blocks, CMU, some metal panels, various paint colors, some wood cladding, which would be along the front. And we also have in the village plan potential Les Schwab that would like to come in with their elevations here. Obviously, this would be a change added to their village plan, which would allow this type of, the community plan, which would allow this type of use there. They would use couple different renditions of block. You see here on the back and on the sides, glass, metal panels. And then staff recommendation is for approval to the City Council. There are some general findings there. Like I said, there are some minor changes we like to do with the pedestrian connectivity, the interior connectivity. There are still some minor changes requested by the engineering department. Nothing substantial, but just some things that need to be corrected from their end.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Is the applicant here?
I'm not Thane. Wade Williams with the Boyer Company, but we are representing the applicant through SLR is the applicant because they still own the property, but I'm with the Boyer Company, 101 South 200 East, Salt Lake City, Utah.
And
Glad
what's
to
your
answer
name?
any questions.
Sure, what's your name?
Wade Williams.
Wade, would you like to take a seat and join us?
I'll have Scott join me. He's with my company as well.
Okay.
No, it's the Wade Williams and the Scott Verheeren.
Scott, could you introduce yourself for us as well? And you can do it right there from sitting down if you like. Make yourself comfortable.
Same address as Wade, Scott Verheeren with Boyer Company.
And did you want to add anything to the presentation today?
No, I think we'd just like to thank the staff and the Planning Commission, City Council have kind of worked with us. We're excited to bring this next phase of development to the community. There's a couple things we still want to make sure we're all on the same page on. Probably the only real issue got it. Issue that we're real sensitive to is the comment about there's no connectivity paths. There may or may not be connectivity currently, but there is connectivity, and it's not our drive aisle. Well, thank you. Thank you. It's our drive aisle. It's not a street. We purposely don't want that to be a street. We want that to be a very calm, and we don't have a problem with those access points because we think that'll keep traffic down. We don't want that circular aisle to get too fast of traffic. So we kind of like that idea. There are times, for example, in phase one, we've combined some pads together with internal access when it works. And sometimes we don't want to connect them together. For example, the Quick Quack car wash, we wouldn't want to connect that to someone next door with the restaurant, for example. Some of that needs to be separated. So generally, sometimes that makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, but we think the ring road is the connectivity that'll tie those together. It's not a public, that won't be a public road, that'll be a private drive. Do you want to add anything to that, Scott?
All right. So this is a public hearing, so we're going to open up public comment for item number 6, Community Plan Major Amendment and Village Plan 2 for the crossing. Stan, did you have anything to say? Okay, since we don't have any public comment, we'll close the public hearing at this time, and we will open it up to the Planning Commission. Commissioner Steele.
Well, I just received some news that makes me change what I thought yesterday. And I don't know how many of you thought about this, but we can't limit, we cannot limit who has one of these electronic signs. So that means that all the pads that are in there are going to be able to have one. And so that makes me, I had some language trying to get it where it was for a movie theater with 360 seats or more. Our attorney says that's content-based, and therefore we can't do that. So I'm going to have to change my mind.
Can I just mention something here?
Yes.
You can limit the number of those types of signs. You're not regulating the content, you're just regulating the amount of them. You have the right to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. We can be creatives, but your proposed language that limited it to entertainment purposes, that would be a content-based regulation. And we'd have to look at making sure we do have a content-neutral regulation. Like David mentioned, we could limit it by the number in this particular community plan, one per community plan in this zone, whatever, something like that. We can look at that. But that proposed language in and of itself would be content-based. But that's a great idea that David mentioned. I'll have to look into that, and we can discuss that as staff.
One other concept that we had discussed was we as a city cannot, but Boyer as the property owner can. So, for example, they could place restrictions and limitations within with their ownership of the parcel and with their contractual relationships. They could potentially put limitations that we would not be able to put on as a city. And so I think they've got some ability to control the way that those would be used, the numbers, the content. I mean, they could make some of those issues moot from our perspective because they've addressed it within their ownership rights. Now, we still need to, kind of do a little research on some of this, but fundamentally, I mean, they are the owners. We had taught, someone had raised in one of the conversations, this is like a billboard, and then it can get sold, and they could be doing off-site, advertising and things of that nature. Not really. I mean, theoretically, yes, but Boyer might be able to control that, and that's something that we would like to have them be able to address contextually within their organization. We can't give them legal advice is basically what I'm getting at.
But we, as a planning commission, could limit the number, maybe.
We'll look into that. I would say that it's the very last option, just because we don't want to be perceived as colluding. That's an issue. So, city, we certainly couldn't say, make sure you have that in your CC&Rs, and we're going to verify that, and that's going to be a condition of our approval. We can't do that, but yeah, certainly as a private entity, they can regulate that on their own. Sure.
Just as a side note, and David, maybe you've got that. The monument signs that we have, all of our signage proposed right now, there's only one sign in there that could be an electronic sign, such as you're pointing out, because all the other signs we have in there right now, the monument pylon signs, are not the electronic type of sign that we discussed yesterday and we're discussing tonight. So if you look at those plans that David's got there in the village plan, and you look at those monument signs, they're not designed to be electronic signs. They're designed to be traditional monument signs and pylon signs.
If I could interrupt, which ones then are the electronic signs?
The only one is that one that David pointed, that one right there that he's got his cursor on. So when we say electronic signs, we're saying LED, the LED type signs. I don't know what the definition of electronic sign is, but the blue, all the other blue signs on there and the other red sign, those are all the traditional backlit type of pylon and monument signs you see all through your city and all over the place, basically.
That's the same sign pattern you see along Redwood Road and the approved plan, the village plan's already out there. They have various monument sign locations, they won't all be utilized. But this really just mirrors what's on Redwood Road right now.
So for the LED sign, what was the time minimum for changing content?
Well, we're probably better off to let Fat Cats talk about it. They talked about an 8-second change, and we'd been thinking something greater than
I
that.
think we were talking something like 20.
And 20 was something that was mentioned as well.
We'd be happy to take that back.
Yeah.
Fat Cats.
As a matter of fact, thinking about, I guess what we could do, David, I'm thinking is maybe go back to that pylon sign, one that we're showing for Fat Cats, and maybe put that a different color and say that's,
Special.
yeah, special sign, electronic sign or something like that. Because that's the only
In the
place.
site plan,
In the site plan itself.
Instead of having two red
Not
ones,
from red to,
purple.
yeah.
Purple,
there.
yeah.
Okay, well, that Fat Cats isn't here, so we really can't talk about it too much. But I'd like to see the Fat Cats come down and be like all your other pylon signs, which is straight across, and not have that curved Fat Cats more fun, or all the more fun.
On the pylon?
On the pylon.
Well, it's actually the same as Smith's. The Smith's has a little, current Smith's pylon sign, it has a little bit of a bow in it.
It has a little bit of a bow, but I think this one has a little bit more.
Yeah, one thing with that though, that's probably a trademark sign, so that's their trademark. So that's something that we can't change.
But we can change where it's put on a sign.
Yes.
That's my concern.
Dave, could you scroll to the existing Smith sign? Yeah, go back to the Smith sign. Yeah, so where you see that top thing, that's where the Smith's logo is. And so Fat Cats is basically doing the same thing. I didn't compare the measurements exactly, but I believe they're fairly close to being, a very similar pylon sign.
And this size sign and that size major tenant does not give me the heartburn that the other sign that they're wanting to put on the crossing. That one.
So the measurement on the sign,
It's about the same.
it's about the same. It is a little bit longer. So this one, I believe, is 7 feet tall.
About
as
70 square
opposed
feet.
to, what's the other one, about 4 feet tall?
5 by 10, so it's
5 feet tall.
It's 50, the two tenant panels here are shown as 50, so 50 square feet, and this one is 70, so another 20 square feet.
I'd like to see it stay at the smaller size. And it's been brought up that a number of us have astigmatism and other eye problems that the lights do bother. I wanted to find out what time they were going to dim them. They say they will dim them, but if they don't dim them until 11 o'clock, that doesn't help people driving and with the lights. So, and I know Wade is not going to like what I'm going to say, but since they're not here, we can go ahead and approve the village plan, but I'd like for movie theaters to stay as a conditional use, just like it is in our code, because they're not here to answer questions, and some questions have come up. So I would, and
Mr. Steele, what did you say? Which one did you want to?
I want all of the ones that they want to be permitted. I'm going to say that our code will not allow major automobile repair. So auto repair any size I couldn't go for. And minor repair, like the tire store, we'd like to, or some of us I know would like to see that come in as a conditional use, so we can put in conditions for tire storage, tire display, what is done all the time, 24 hours a day, and what won't be done 24 hours a day. There's a lot of things that go into that I think we'd like to see. And let's see, full service car wash. Again, which way is the blower going to blow? Because that makes a difference in sound. And the convenience store with fast food, I am assuming that is with a fuel station. And if it is, then there's some things that we have in our code that are special, that you can't be within 500 feet of certain uses. So that needs to stay as a conditional use. And equipment sales and service, boy, that's a wide range. I thought typewriters and business machines, and somebody else thought caterpillars. And so I'd be okay with the typewriters and the computers, but I don't think I want to see tractors or boats and things like that.
That might be an antique shop.
What's a typewriter? Oh, an antique shop, I get it.
But because of that, that is so broad, I think, again, I'd like to see that come back as a conditional use. And fat cats, since they're not here, I think that that needs to come back as a conditional use. And part of it is we look at different things than the staff sometimes looks at. And so I think I would not be in favor of those uses being just flat out permitted.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Other than the sign, is there something else about the theater that you've got concerns
Yes,
about?
I'd like to know more about their drop-off and pickup. I'd like to know more about their signs, what time they're going to go off, what their ambient lighting is, the lumens. There's a lot of questions on the signs, yes. But, and I think that we're going to probably have to have them go back through the DAP if they want the electronic signs. I looked through the DAP last night and I could not find anything on signs. So it's silent, and normally if it's silent, it reverts to our city code, which does not allow electronic signs. And so, and all of their examples of the retail, commercial, or regional retail, all of their pictures do not show any kind of neon, any kind of electronic signs. So I'm wondering, I think that's something that probably our city attorney is going to have to weigh in on, whether they're going to have to go all the way back through the DAP and change that before we go forward. But anyway, our DAP calls for, in regional retail, it calls for an entrance park, a plaza, a pocket park, a greenway parkway, a park lawns, and connector trails. And you have the connector trails, but I don't see any type of area that could be called a gathering place. And this is one thing that I'll look at Brianna, but in your general plan, a lot of people said that they wanted a place, a gathering place. And the crossing was used as an example, that that's what we would get there. And we're getting well into the project, and we're not seeing anything of size that would be considered a gathering place. And to me, that would be a place where you'd have street musicians, somebody with balloons, tying them off, you know, giving them to kids, that type of an area that will draw the community together. It'll draw them into your development. And it would be nice if that was, I don't know that it needs to be with fat cats. That might be the logical place, but I don't see any plans for that in any of the pad sites and on fat cats. So we need to think of that, and I don't want to get to the last tenant that comes in and have it be something that the city really wants, and then we'll say, you haven't met the DAP because you don't have a plaza or a gathering place. So that being said, you said you didn't you were concerned about giving pedestrian connectivity through the pad sites,
Not pedestrian, vehicular.
vehicular.
Yeah, we totally agree on in pedestrian access. It's the vehicular. And the comments that were made by David, we're going to incorporate as far as the pedestrian accesses are concerned. That's just a miss on our view.
Okay, because I was going to say, I think by federal law you have to.
No.
Okay. I was not supportive of the getting rid of the pedestrian in a large parking lot, but I can see where it would not really work very well, so I'll mark that one off. And in the village plan, it looks like the bike rack and benches are changing. That was one of the things that was circled. What are they changing to, and what are they changing?
Well, the problem we had is the original benches that we had in Phase 1 could only be found in England, and they had about a 9-month lead time. They cost about $100,000 a piece. So we went to what we have now, which is out there in the project, and what we're representing in the village plan is what we currently have.
And the staff approved it.
The change,
Well,
yeah.
I think I would too.
Nobody put up a fight
If you're
for
going to do
$100,000
that,
bench?
I'd suggest some amenities that would do more.
We found one in Burley, Idaho, I think, that looked really nice, so that's what we picked.
Very good. Bike rack, is it staying the same?
Yeah, I think that stays the same. We sourced that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then coming up with Les Schwab, that, as I say, should be a conditional use. It is considered a minor automotive repair. And so, and then the one thing that this is a personal thing I'm going to ask, and I guess it's in our code, but I'm going to ask as nicely as I can. I've noticed on some of the pads that are already there and the buildings are there that the electrical panels and gas meters are unsightly. And our code says that you need to screen them in some way, and there's lots of ways to do it. However, to plant today a plant that's this high, hoping it'll get this high in 5 years, isn't going to cut it. So we need some shrubs or something that will actually hide it. And they need to go in at a size that will give some relief today. And I think that's all I've got.
We have more time.
Don't tempt me.
I took notes. Anyone else? Hey.
Very thorough, Commissioner Steele. So with what we're being presented today in the approval, is this the applicant's statement that there's only one big sign? Is that part of the approval? I mean, is that what we're approving, that there's one sign and all the all the other ones are traditional signs?
Well, they're asking for the LED on Redwood, that goes on an existing sign, but then would be the new sign.
But all those other dots.
Those are just as other businesses.
There's only one of those.
Right.
That's what we're approving.
Right.
So in the future,
And
if
when
we
we
came back
can-
and said we want another one, we would have to approve that.
Yeah, we could change that dot to make that specific to an LED type sign, if you want. They can make that change on the sheet.
Mr. Thurman had indicated that, we can limit it to a quantity or whatnot, and it seems the applicant has done that for us by the statement that there's only one sign going up on Pioneer Crossing of that nature.
And I think we should specify that on that diagram that had all the dots, to specify that one being, instead of a red dot, instead of like make it orange or something, but say that is then an LED sign.
The only problem with that is in that zone, that particular zone, you would have to have that same limit. So in another community plan that was brought in, they could have the one electronic message sign.
Well, except for this, the applicant themselves only said they were going to put in one. And so if that's what we're approving, then the applicant themselves limited themselves to one.
To keep it content neutral in another community plan in this zone that was brought in, they would also be able to have one.
That means if across the street we have more commercial and it comes in under a different community plan, maybe Boyer doesn't bring it in, maybe somebody else does, then we would have to allow then two, since we're allowing two in this one.
It's just the one.
Yeah, I have not had a chance to analyze this. I would like some time, so I would just identify that as a problem and we'll look into it.
Well, I mean, I'm just
As an
bringing that up
issue.
because I don't want, 18 months from now, when a new tenant comes in and they want to have another sign, all those dots could essentially theoretically become those signs if an applicant or a tenant wanted those signs. And so we're talking about a way to limit those, and it seems the applicant has done that by saying that they're only going to use one. And so if we're going to approve that, that's essentially what we're doing, is that not?
Yes, but, perhaps we can for sure look into that. But for sure, if you allow one electronic message sign in this particular community plan, any other use that comes in there, let's say Fat Cats goes away, building gets raised, they put in a park there, just hypothetically speaking, any of those other uses in this community plan could then, there could be one electronic message sign. So it could be a church, they could have an electronic message sign, as long as there'd be one within that community plan, if that makes sense.
Well, now, would my comment that if something came in across the street under the planned commercial or planned community, because we've allowed it in this community plan, that we'd have to allow it in the other community plan?
Possibly, let me look into that one. I can't answer that on the spot.
Okay, I appreciate that, Kevin. Mr. Chair, I think Commissioner Steele brought up a lot of questions. I may have follow-ups after the city has a chance to respond or the applicant has a chance to respond to those, but for now, I suppose that's it.
Any other comments, or did you want to take a chance to respond to some of the things that Commissioner Steele brought up?
I think we just soon maybe handle them all at once, if that's okay, just at the end. Is that
All right, I hope you're taking notes like I am. There's a lot so far.
happy to?
Yeah, I'm glad that you incorporated, or you're going to incorporate all those additional pedestrian connectivity areas to keep that calm from vehicles. I do sympathize, I'd like a kind of gathering place, but with the shape of this property and the parking you'll need for each pad, I just don't know where you would put something like that. So if you could make it up with those additional pedestrian walkways, I think that'd be really great and still kind of cultivate the same feeling as a gathering area. Maybe everyone will gather at Fat Cats. So as long as those pedestrian walkways are added, and I think I'm good, and I don't have an issue with the video board. I think that's perfectly fine.
Commissioner Kilgore.
Yeah.
Okay, so I echo the previous commissioner's comments about the conditional uses. So let's see what I write here. If conditionally permitted uses become permitted, can the Planning Commission and the City Council still review the proposed uses? I believe we can still review them. Is that?
Well, as a conditional use, the City Council is the ultimate approval as a land use authority for a conditional use. And that would then work way through the Planning Commission also.
But what if it were permitted then?
If it's permitted, then it would just be site plan approval with the staff.
Okay, all right.
So if I could, one of the things that I wanted to kind of point to, and this is some direction that we'd talked with the council about before, which was making these pad sites so that the pad sites themselves, we've kind of got the conditions outlined in the community plan and the village plan, and then it's a staff level approval so that businesses coming in don't have to keep coming back and keep going through the process. And so if you'll recall, when we did this as part of the first community plan, the intent of that was to create a process that streamlines business development in the community. And so what I'm hearing with that particular comment is that you want to undo the streamlined nature of what we were intending with those pad sites to bring it back for additional approvals and additional conditions. And if I'm misunderstanding that, you're trying to put a hook back in that we had as part of the community plan specifically built in to streamline that process. And so I just want to make sure that philosophically you're undoing what we'd already approved in the community plan process the first time around, and we are adding pad sites, but we'll add pad sites in phase 3 as well, and if they maybe broke it into a 4 or something, or subsequent phases. And so please understand, that's a pretty big philosophical change. We've seen this be very successful at a staff level approval. That's something that the council had directed for before. So I'm just wanting to point that out. A conditional use contingency here slows down that process and puts it back into a review process. Now, I don't know if it's because of the tire store wanting to come in, the Les Schwab wanting to come in. We did just allow for another tire store to come in on Redwood Road in a commercial area. So to say now that that's not consistent with the commercial use seems to be a little bit of an undo, which was something that was allowed over on another parcel within the regional commercial concept. So anyway, just a few thoughts on those topics.
Commissioner Kilgore, can I explain myself on that? I believe the one that came in under regional commercial that you're talking about was a conditional use. It's listed as a conditional use. I'm not adding anything that isn't already in our code as conditional uses. And I'm not trying to, if he comes in with restaurants, it looks like you're coming in with drive-through restaurants. We didn't see any of those. I don't have a problem with them. It's the uses that they want to have as permitted that need sometimes, not always, but sometimes need additional conditions on them, because they're going to get it anyway, but we may want to put additional conditions on, such as hours of operation, such as parking, such as lighting. There's a whole list of things that we look at that I think our citizens expect us to look at. I'm not trying to, if all those pads come in with restaurants and retail stores, AT&T, whatever, I don't care. They can go there. It's just these uses that we have deemed that have some issues within our own code. Does that kind of...
Yeah, I understand what you're asking, but if you say that they're allowed within this particular scenario, then they would be an allowed use, and it would have the ability to have that streamlined approval process.
So my intent is I do like the streamlining, and I want to continue with that. My only issue is with refueling stations. All the other ones like restaurants and such, even tire stores, those are retail shops with business hours, with set business hours. No problem with that. However, refueling stations, usually they're open 24 hours. There's usually a lot of residents' comments about that kind of thing. And so I just wanted one more level of either a chance for public input and also a review, rather than just the staff saying, go ahead, for refueling stations. But all the other ones I'm okay with. And so I think that, yes, there's the philosophy, but there's always a chance that maybe we went, it's like a pendulum, we go a little bit too far, and maybe we're just trying to get it at the right point. And for me, refueling stations is the one area where I feel like we still need to have some, per code, some oversight, just one more level of scrutiny in order to make sure that we incorporate all the stakeholders' opinions for that use. Anyway, so that's my comment.
Okay.
Let me add to that just for a second.
Commissioner Kilgore, unfortunately, the horse has already gotten out of the barn. It is a permitted use in their community plan right now.
Including automobile repair?
No, specific uses shall comply with regional commercial
I'm looking.
uses as a permitted or conditionally permitted as outlined in 1904 of the Saratoga Springs Municipal Code, with the exceptions that retail, big box fitness centers, and automobile refueling stations shall be deemed a permitted use.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's where I was saying, I was thinking that it should, that except for refueling stations, I'd be okay with the permitted, for it to be permitted use, but that
It's
refueling
already-
stations continue to be conditional use. I thought
They
the
have
applicant was
they have a
requesting-
fueling station right there. But here's another one, automobile repair, that's been a big hot topic. In
Absolutely.
other places, we've had a lot of controls where the automobile repair happens within the walls and the cars aren't left outside. Automobile sales, that's been a hot topic. We talked about a lot of these. So if we let them have all of this in their community plan, then there's no more oversight over it. Sure, it's streamlined, but is it something we want to give up all oversight for? I'm not sure if we do either.
I don't.
Does the council still has final approval? So if an automobile shop does, or is it streamlined all the way through city council?
So, I mean, from a recommendation standpoint, that's kind of the ask that they're making, that it be permitted within this, and then it would follow that process from going forward, is my understanding.
What he's asking is, does the city council have the ability to oversee these uses in their community once, if we were to grant this?
So my understanding is if it's conditional, then we have, it's like a legislative thing where we can decide whether they do or not. If it's permitted, then it just becomes administrative.
Right, but this is a deficiency thing where we're streamlining it and, the only thing it has to have is staff approval. Does that, it bypasses planning commission, does that bypass city council?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, and also, Commissioner Steele, I understood that the applicant is requesting that it becomes conditional or permitted, not that it already is.
It already is.
Well, that's why it's in the little bubbly paragraph, and it also says in the staff packet that they were requesting it.
No,
Yeah, that may be an error on my part, but the current plan right now says automotive filling stations shall be deemed a permitted use. That's in the code right now. If that's opposite of what I said in my staff report, that's an error, but that's permitted right now.
Okay, so then the bubbly thing as well as the staff packet, both are...
Well, in some of those bubbles, not everything was changed within that bubble. I can go to it here. So I'm guessing not everything that was changed, but there are parts of that were changed.
But automobile repair is not currently a permitted use.
Yes, let me just read right now.
Could you indicate to us which ones are permitted right now and which ones are new, bubbly thing?
I'll preface that with what's in the community plan right now under the guiding principles. It says specific uses shall comply with the regional commercial uses as permitted or conditionally permitted as outlined in section 1904 of the Saratoga Springs Municipal Code. So right now, if they're permitted or conditional for any other RC zone, that's what they have to comply with here, except for retail, big box, fitness center greater than 5,001 square feet or larger, and automotive refueling stations shall be deemed a permitted use. So basically, right now, they got to comply with what the RC zone says, except for those few right now. They want to add more into there.
Right.
That would then be permitted, which are either conditional or not permitted right now. We can pull up the table if you like and go through it. That's what they're trying to do, is add a few more to streamline, like Mark had talked about, streamline that process, where we set the standards in the community plan and the village plan, and then staff approves the site plan.
All right, so I've got a proposal. There's so many different layers in this, layers of regulation, as you know. It gets very complex. Why don't you tell us which ones you're comfortable with being permitted, which ones or maybe you can just go with the ones you're not comfortable, the ones that you want to be conditional, and even if there are some that you don't want to be permitted at all, mention that as well. And staff will look into that, and if we can, we'll put that in the recommendation of the council.
So for me, it's refueling stations. That's it.
For me, it's the way the code is written.
And you want
19.04.
you want that to be conditional, right?
The 1904 would be conditional, yes.
Okay.
No, and then all these uses would be conditional, automotive repair, sales, tire sales, full service car wash, etc.
And I think city council should approve.
that means it comes to us too.
Right?
And I think that it,
Otherwise, you have to rewrite the code. Processing.
I went through all of them that are conditional uses. I looked at our chart, and I do have it with me tonight. If anybody wants to take a quick look at it, if you want to, do you want to take a little bit of a recess so that everybody can look at this? And
Well, we should do it as a public meeting.
well,
We don't have an ex parte meeting.
Oh, I have,
No.
yeah, I have that on my thing, the code.
If you want to pull it up, I don't know. It's the permitted and conditional uses.
Right. So I also want to look at page 9 of the community plan. There is a development approval process for the crossing. I mean, in there, it seems like they're bypassing a couple things too. They're bypassing the planning commission in number 2. It says minor changes to the approved village or community plans may be approved by the planning director. Could you define minor?
Yeah, well, I can go up in the code there. That's already in the code now, in the
Okay.
PC zone now.
And also,
We'll pull that up.
Director Stroud, I misinterpreted that when you put it in that bubble again, and also what was in the staff packet, I thought when it said that except for these uses, they shall be permitted, I thought that was in question, or.
Those are the new.
Yeah, that was new, and that's why I thought that I didn't realize it was already in the community plan that way. Otherwise, why put a bubble around it? And that was my thinking.
And we can pull up those individual ones too, if you like, and go through it.
Applicant, what other things are concerns amongst the rest of the group? And then let's talk to the applicant about which ones are they concerned most about.
I have a long list that I was taking notes, and I'm not done with my own yet, but I just wanted to make sure everybody else is.
No, I still have more comments.
Okay, let's continue with the planning commission.
I just have a few
comments.
more.
Okay.
Yeah, so the structure height, this is really a comment not to the applicant, but to staff again. I think we brought this up last meeting as well. The DAP allows it, so it's not an issue for the applicant. But if the structure height, if the request is 125 feet buildings, and our code is set up for 50 feet maximum, then if we're allowing 125 feet, again, that's not a problem. That's not a problem for me. But then how does that affect, dark sky ordinances, the RC and helicopter fly zones and all that stuff? I think that's something that we may have to look at and change the code. Is 50 feet really realistic when we've already had now 2 applicants in 2 meetings in a row asking for something that's higher? So I think it's just something that we should look at maybe.
Yeah, I'll just point out too, the existing community plan under structure height, right now it says no structure in this zone shall be taller than 50 feet with the exception of a movie theater which shall not exceed 60 feet and office buildings which shall not exceed 100 feet. So right now you can do an office at 100 permitted.
Okay. Yeah, so I have no problem. I know that, if we have a district area plan or a community plan that allows exceptions to the code, that's fine because that's allowed. But I'm just saying that as for planning purposes, we plan the city around 50 feet maximum, but if we're allowing higher ones, how does that then affect the reasons why we kept it at 50? For example, dark sky ordinance and all this other stuff. So I think it's something that we should look at. And then if it really doesn't matter, then we should just increase the height allowance. And then on page 38, there's a... Oh, yeah. So I can't remember what you call it. On Redwood Road, we have option 2 for the entry into the air, I was wondering why, why the applicant chose the number 2 option rather than the number 1 option as it is all along Redwood Road there. I couldn't tell the reason why you decided to do that with the number 2 instead of number 1 like all the other ones.
I'm sorry, which page is that?
I'm sorry, it's page 38, which is Exhibit 8.
The community plan?
And the community, yes, and the conceptual transportation plan and the community plan.
It's the page 38.
Yeah.
We don't go to 38.
What?
29.
Oh, I'm sorry, so on your thing it says page 26. Sorry, it was 38 on my, yeah, sorry about that.
We added a new one there that's, it's the new U.CFI intersection that's going to be done. So it wasn't anticipated when we did the original community plan. Now that the CFI is coming in, we just needed to add that type of approach as well.
Okay.
So it's just it's the new approach that UDOT's designed that will be done as part of that access, current access in phase one.
I see. Okay.
Tying into UDOT's plan.
Okay. And then one last, can you clarify the OS plans for this property, the open space plans for the property?
In the community plan or village plan?
In the village plan.
The open spaces really in the village plan are really the linear walkways. That's really, there's no additional open space besides landscaping and pedestrian access.
You can see out there on the screen the green for the open space.
Does that in total match what they need to have for?
Yeah, within this plan, it's only, I want to say 11% is the minimum amount. Honestly, it's not a whole lot, but that's what's approved right now is 11%.
Okay, all right, that's good. And then just in general comments, I really, I'm happy about this development, particularly the Fat Cats. It's going to give our teenagers and a place to gather. I completely agree with the previous comments about having it as a district area plan that we should have an open space. That's not Fat Cats' issue. In fact, they are not an open space, but a gathering space. But that is what Fat Cats is. It's a gathering space, just internal, which is great for our weather. So I think that's terrific. But I do agree that wish we had some kind of an open gathering space. But that's probably more of a city working with some other developers. It's not necessarily it's not really particularly about any specific property owner. So it's just more of a vision that we have than anything else. But I'm very, I actually really love the idea of having a Fat Cats and kind of a business in Saratoga Springs for our youth, and as well as for the older, for people like me too. So.
Any other comments?
So adding those previously mentioned uses as permitted uses is for all PC zones, not just this particular.
No, that's just this community plan. Okay. Each community plan, you can specify what uses are permitted within that plan.
Okay. I don't have an issue with those being added to permitted. I don't want to be contrary, but I just don't have a problem with that, streamlining it for them and making it so 15 million things don't have to come across our agenda and council's agenda. I think that'd be in our best interest.
All right. Any other thoughts? I'm going to recap then. Okay, so this is what we have. These are the thoughts that were brought up. So let me just group all the uses that were proposed as permitted. That's on the table for whether we want to make them permitted or whether we want to make those conditional uses. And we know what all those are. They're all in the packet. Second, that's not part of there is hours of operation, lumens on the signs, etc. Reverting to city codes for signage if it's not in the community plan. Previous pictures didn't have signs with the lighting. The DAP calls for an entrance park, plaza, pocket park, and connector trails. No area called gathering place or size considered gathering. Balloons and live mini. Vehicular connectivity was what they were talking about instead of people connectivity. Let's see, in the village plan, it looks like the bike rack and the benches are changing. Les Schwab should be conditional use. That goes in the same category as the first one we were talking about. Electrical panels and gas meters need to be screened in some way. Shrubbery. Gathering's going to be indoors at Fat Cats. Okay with the billboard from Commissioner Brush, Commissioner Kilgore. Height of the building. How does the height affect the sky ordinance and the fly zones?
Wait, what did you say my name about?
But you said you had questions about the height of the building. Once we change.
I thought something about billboard. Did you say?
No.
Oh, okay.
Height of the building. How does that affect the dark sky ordinance and the fly zones?
That's no, I actually have a major issue with the signs, but everything else is fine.
What's your issue with the signs?
What was already brought up. I have a big problem with, I think it's not something that on our level, I think there's some, yeah, I have a problem with the LED, with the big LED signs. I mean, it's already been discussed, and I'm okay with the comments I've already made.
Right. So I haven't said anything yet. Since I've been here a little more over 4 years, and we've always made, the first time we ever had a problem with the sign that was lit was the dentist office that's just around the corner here, and that it might light up the apartment buildings that are behind there. This is a whole different ballgame. Now we have huge monument signs, and we've changed a lot of our code to accommodate for things like this. We had never been okay to date with a billboard. Nobody's ever done that before in the city. My opinion is I don't want to see a lot of billboards going up in the whole city. If we can control this, if we could make it so it's very limited use, and I don't know that we can with all the Utah lobbyists that we have. So I share the opinion of one of our council members that I don't really want to see a lot of signs. We always made fun of the giant monolith that's over at the Traverse Mountain. I could see that until a house was built to block that, and I was okay with losing my view of the lake, so I didn't have to see that. Yeah, I also have a question. How does the height of a building change the dark sky ordinance? How does it change the fly zone? So I'd like to know that too, but I'm sure that we are not the professionals that can help decide that, but maybe they're sitting here and they work in the office, and so maybe that's something we can make a motion tonight to either forward on something that has our city staff look into all these different items and be able to make sure that they comply with code, and see if they really want to give up, if the city council really wants to give up all of their oversight for all these other conditional uses that are currently in that code. Anyway. Any other thoughts?
Well, with what you have said and what I'm thinking and what some others have said, we still have, I think, too many questions and unknowns to send this forward until we get some answers. Now, I don't think we can approve plans, sign plans at all at this point. I don't know if that's even in our purview. Because I think those are usually done by staff, but I'd like to know some of the answers.
Right, so we're stuck in a position where this is an administrative decision. However, it's governed by the community plan, which they're asking for a change to it. So for us, we have to decide whether it complies with code now, which it doesn't. It's different than what the code is now, so it's really not kind of a legislative administrative decision. It's tough for us.
Maybe we could continue it till we get some of these answers, and maybe 2 weeks. I know our city manager has ants in his pants.
Too much caffeine.
We had a comment here. Staff, what do you have to say about all of the concerns that we brought up tonight? And
well, yeah, and obviously any concerns legitimate, and we can try and address those. It's up to the planning commission, though. Is it a big enough concern that you're not comfortable forwarding that on to the city council, or are you comfortable saying these are our concerns, city council? We want staff to look into it, and ultimately you, council, have the final decision. We'll leave that up to you, but you can give your recommendation on any of those.
I've always felt like we're a body that can make a decision, and we can suggest enough and structure it enough so that we can move things on. But that's just one opinion.
I mean, the general, okay, so out of a 155-page packet, the biggest questions are signs and the conditional use stuff. That's it.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, we should be able to forward most of it along and then just have those two maybe looked at. I mean, there are some other ones that, you know, with the meters and things like that, but that we usually deal with that all the time. You know, we usually deal with that as either a condition or something, but it's just those two things. And it's going to require staff looking at it, but it doesn't mean that we have to hold up the, I mean, Fat Cats was talking about trying to open by Thanksgiving. That'd be great if they could do that. And, you know, I don't want us to be the reason why they can't do that. If it's something that we can handle through staff while the process moves forward.
And what's interesting is the decision that we'd make tonight is really not on us, it's on the city council. So the city council, if they decide to bypass or to streamline and make these permitted uses, then by nature of that, we wouldn't have to see it either. So it's really not our decision.
I think if you look at it too, the council's still going to consider everything, your concerns. If you forward that on, they're still going to look at it. It's not like if you recommend yes or no, they're going to discount that. But
and maybe they won't agree and they'll have to vote too. So.
Yeah.
I think we're a body that can make a decision and forward on some of our tough work.
Are we willing to not see the sign plans anymore? Because if we send it on, that this is our last chance to get any answers, and the people who have the answers aren't here.
Well, but to that point, I mean, we did have the applicant here just yesterday to meet with you all and with the city council. We understand what their request is at length. However, I hate to say that it just, this is kind of a legislative decision that the council is going to have to overcome. You're asking a question and you're saying, well, because they're not here to answer the question, we should table it or bring it back. And I'm not convinced that's necessarily. I think that's kind of what Commissioner Kilgore is kind of pointing towards. Is they had to be in Colorado, they couldn't be here today, but they do have representatives here that understand their request. Their request is very, very clear, I think, in the village plan and the community plan. You see what's been approved, you see what they're asking for, and you can forward a recommendation, yay or nay, and it's very clear on that. And they were very clear on that when we've spoken with them.
Did they ever say when they were going to dim them? They said they were going to dim them, but
Actually,
they didn't say when.
They did propose the Gilbert, Arizona code. They had some text that they actually had, and I believe that they've passed it on to Dave Stroud. And it would be 3 candle, I think it was 3 candle power over the ambient light. So as it gets darker, it would dim down. And so, they were proposing that it would be on until, I believe, 1 o'clock, which is their closing time, and that was their request relative to that. So, again, we can answer some of these questions. You may not, you may want to restrict them, you may want to reduce them down. 1 o'clock may be too late. Maybe you want it to go dark sky at 10 or 11. That's a recommendation that you could make. But they did suggest that it would go to about 60% brightness during the night is about what they've found in Gilbert.
Okay, and this has been brought up to me about, there are certain people who are very, very sensitive to light. And so if they're driving down the crossing and they see that light, even at 60%, that's pretty bright. And if they don't, if they start dimming it appreciably at dusk, then that's one thing. But if they're going to wait till 8, 9, 10 o'clock, that's something else.
Yeah, and I
I
believe
think you can tie it to a sensor. We can tie it to a sensor that just
Same as the parking lot lights.
just it dims as the darkness.
Yeah, here's the email Rob Friend sent me. He's with a representative of Fat Cats, and this is what they used in Gilbert. It says, under their code, illumination levels shall incorporate photocell light sensors with automatic dimming technology that appropriately adjusts to ambient light conditions. Display shall have a brightness level of no greater than 0.3 foot candles above ambient light conditions.
Scott and I have seen their sign down there, and it really does function well. I think that code is working in Gilbert, and that's something that we're comfortable with, and I think, I think it'll work very well here. So I would suggest maybe we incorporate those provisions as part of your approval.
And then one other comment that was made, just real quick, and it was regarding height. And I believe it's about 100 feet is where the FAA standards kick in. There's already standards relative to that. So if we're at 120, they're going to have lights on the top of their building consistent with FAA because it's that 100-foot. Cell towers, when they hit that 100-foot, they have to have those lighting things. And so I think that there is already existing code that will address those issues. We've raised them. I think that's fantastic. As far as us just following what those requirements will be when we do get to those heights, I don't think we're going to see those heights anytime soon. But I think that their request is just to be consistent with what was recently approved with IHC, and it does clean it up. It just changes it a little bit. I think it's what, a 20-foot change? Are they approved 120 now?
Well, yeah, offices right now can go to 100 in the community plan.
25-foot difference over what's approved. And I agree with what you were suggesting about the permitted uses, permitted and conditional uses. Ultimately, it comes down to more, if the council wants to allow that or not. I think that was a very good observation on that. And you can craft some recommendations. If you don't want full automotive, I think that's a question probably for Boyer. Are you looking for full automotive, or were you just grabbing everything that's not already allowed?
Well, it's a nice segue into what we were going to say. Part of the reason we added these into the permitted use was our understanding with what Mark said earlier about philosophically trying to streamline this. And you brought up some uses tonight that you prefer to keep conditional, and I don't know that we've got all those exactly right, but we're not opposed to that. A lot of those, I think, was mentioned. We're trying to compare what was in the original one to this one right now, but for instance, like automobile sales and full-service car wash and some other things we added in, that was an attempt to try to streamline the whole process. If there's a concern on the part of the Planning Commission that we leave some of those in there as conditional uses, we're willing to do that. We would request, however, no offense to Commissioner Steele, but we would like to have the entertainment and theater use be a permitted use going forward. With some of the others, it sounded to us more like it was related to automobile uses and sales. If those need to remain as conditional uses, we're
Well, again, if they have business hours, then I'm okay, but if it's open 24 hours, that's where I would like additional residential input and, especially refueling, because there's also noxious substances with refueling. That was the only reason why I brought that up.
No, and I think the refueling is a permitted use per our previous approval, but some of these others that we've added in here, like such as the tire sales and automobile sales and major auto repair, if we left those as conditional use so that we have those uses come back to you as a planning commission, we're okay with that.
Excellent.
And I think that that's something that between, the city council, I think Les Schwab is pointed out pretty directly here. You probably ought to vote it up or vote it down because it's included in the application. I agree with them on the Fat Cats, the theater use. I mean, they're the anchor tenant for this next phase. And to say that it's a conditional use and have to come back to defend it being a conditional use, I don't think that that's really, it's very clearly a part of this application. I think you should either vote it up or vote it down and let that move forward.
What else falls into this category, this entertainment and movie theater category?
Well,
You mean in the language, or?
Yeah, what would that encompass?
Well, we added the language, we added language to allow fat cats. That's basically what we added. We added, and we tried to go to your code and your categories and put them into here. So the category specifically to fat cats would be entertainment centers, movie theaters, bowling alleys, and arcades. Those are all encompassed within the fat cats, so that's why we included it.
And just above that is refueling stations.
Refueling station was already in the previous.
So, but you included it in this paragraph.
It was in the community plan.
Yeah, when you look at that cloud around that permitted uses, yeah, obviously it should be written easier where more show just red what's new, but yeah, the refueling station is not new on this. I mean, it makes it look like that whole paragraph is new under permitted uses. It's not.
So were there restrictions on Smith's? I think the gas station closes at a certain time in the evening, doesn't it?
I don't recall.
But it certainly dims down, and it certainly kind of reduces its lights down. And that's an existing use with Smith's. And so to take it out at this point, you've already got a grandfathered use in there. So it may or may not have the desired result.
I think we settled the gas station use.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the lights go, it's either 11 o'clock or an hour after closing, half the lights have to be cut off, as it is, parking lot lights, building lights.
Okay, so let's just compartmentalize this request. Did you have a?
Well, I wanted to, last night, you had a screen that showed Dalmore Meadows, and you said that the northernmost the northernmost house was the one that would be most affected. There are houses right across from that. I mean, and I'm wondering, and so there's going to be some that will be affected more than what you portrayed in that screen.
And again, it's the screen that they're proposing on that side is 9 foot by 4 foot?
Correct.
Or 10 foot by 4 foot, 40 square feet.
It's about 40 square feet.
Yeah, and so again, we've used the vernacular of billboard, but it's I mean, it's potatoes, potatoes. It's a sign. It's an LED sign. It's a lit sign. It's a sign that will change, you know, its picture. It really is this philosophical question, and truthfully, I've seen the city council struggle with this question time and time again as it's been coming before them over the years, and so if you've got a recommendation, I would say make that and send it to the council and let them philosophically, you know, decide what they may.
So I don't know where I mean, obviously, I'm just speaking for myself, but, you know, this has some legislative aspects, but as an administrative thing, we are, you know, an apolitical body. It seems to me, just philosophically, that if something is ambiguous as this, or even controversial as this, or, you know, when there's a lot of discretion in this sort of thing, I think it would serve the Planning Commission well to bracket the concerns as best we can and let the elected officials decide the vision of the city. We can't decide that here. I mean, we're just starting to go cyclical. And so, you know, we've listed signs, conditional use, and height. We're recommending things to the city council anyway, and they're the ones who are accountable to the residents if they blow up the city because they're allowing all these, you know, signs and things like that. I don't know that we can do much more than to put it in the city council's lap, and if they want to streamline it, like was said, that's the city council's problem. If, you know, if businesses come in that residents don't like, you know, then they're accountable as they are to the voters. I think that's the only, I mean, to me, that's the only reasonable thing we can do at this point is to bracket the concerns as best as possible, and Kevin, maybe you can help us come up with the language to you know, but at this point, I think if we can come up with language to bracket those concerns, I would certainly be in favor of positive recommendations so that the city council can then make the decision.
Could we do something like break this up, maybe to 3 different motions? I was thinking one for the plat approval, one to do with the conditional uses, and then one to deal with the electronic sign, because my biggest concern is the electronic sign. I don't know that I could say yes to it.
Well, I think that electronic sign is also more of a legal issue, and it's not something that the client can actually give us more clarity. Because if the client will simply say what they want to do, then it's a question of whether we can or can't do it. And I think it's more of a legal, philosophical thing that the city council has to, and the staff has to work with, rather than us.
I think it's more than whether we can or can't do it, it's whether we will or won't do it.
Yeah.
That decision is in the city council. So let's go down the list. Let's go down the list.
Les Schwab put on that list.
Okay, so we have signs, which is lit LED signs.
Black Burgle?
We have the height of the building, how does it affect the, we already, did we discuss that one enough, or do we need answers on that?
No, I think with the height, it was asking the staff to eventually look into it.
Right, okay.
And whether we should just go ahead and allow it, so
Everybody agree
nothing
to that?
to do with the
I
applicant.
think that's right, so.
But that can just be a direction to the staff rather than a condition.
Right, can you just write that one down? Just
Yeah, it
direction
has nothing to do with the
staff
applicant.
to revisit the code involving the height change. Okay, the second one was the signs, the lit signs. Should we just go down the list and see, do a quick opinion?
Personally,
We had a no?
I understand their need and their wants, and I would prefer to see both signs with the smaller square footage. The, like the redwood sign and the crossing
16
sign.
signs with the 2 placeholders that it fits in that space.
Right, and they're going to put up a new sign, so we're not making them do something above them, or, you know, tear one down or anything. And I really think that that size, just to get it just a little bit smaller, less obtrusive, it will still give them the opportunity to put up, it's their choice, whether they want to put up the, like we saw last night, Jumanji, or if they want to put Jumanji now playing, and then the next, you know, it still gives them that opportunity. It's just not quite as obtrusive.
But even if it's smaller, is it still okay to allow the LED type sign then? That opens up a whole new thing.
I know, I don't like them. I have dug my heels in, and I've...
No. I don't like this. I don't want to have a bunch of billboards. I do want to be business friendly, but I've seen beautiful businesses beautiful business parks. Just saw another one back in California in El Dorado Hills. They've expanded it. It's a gorgeous place, a lot of stonework, a lot of nice open areas, and they did have the open venues. It was gorgeous. Didn't have billboards.
I'm okay as long as it's dimmable, and
I'm okay as long as it's dimmable as well.
Okay, so next subject.
Guess that
Les
would be
Schwab?
a no for me, too, on
Okay.
that.
Got that. Les Schwab, I'm okay with Les Schwab.
I'm okay.
That is a tire store, and that is a conditional use in our code.
Right.
And they have changed the architecture, and it's going to be a lot different than what the pads are going to be. And I'm concerned, Les Schwab in the past has had tires everywhere, and tire stores tend to push the envelope. And that's the reason I'd like to see that stay as a conditional use permit and not approve it as.
Yeah, well, one thing with tires, you can say there's no outside storage. Because that's what a lot of tire stores do. They put all their tires out during the day, wheel them all in at night, because that's advertising for them.
So,
But
Well, what happened?
I think what we're down to is, if I understand the discussion that we've had, was whether or not this is a conditional or permitted use. And so I think we've heard that it's already in there as a permitted use, the tire store. I thought it was the major auto repair that was up for discussion. Okay, well, we can look into that. If really it just if it boils down to permitted or conditional, you can make that part of your motion, that either staff look into it to determine what the current regs are.
Oh, I've got them.
And
I've looked at them.
So let's put,
And then-
are we suggesting that Les Schwab go into the
that
discussion?
recommendation to the council.
Are we suggesting that Les Schwab go into the discussion of permitted versus conditional use?
Yes,
Okay. So on permitted
The
versus
tire
conditional uses,
tire stores.
were there any conditional uses that you were not okay with them going to permitted? Or was that all of them?
All of them. I was concerned about. Car sales, as you said, has been a big subject of discussion. Equipment, that opens up such a wide range of things.
It'd be an antique shop for your typewriter.
That would be fine.
Okay,
but,
so your
the
vote is all of them.
all of them.
Commissioner Brush?
I'm okay with all of them becoming permitted uses.
Okay. As them being permitted?
Yes.
So you're okay with the business having them in streamlining, okay?
Well, I missed the boat, so now I'm okay with it. I missed the boat on the refueling station, so everything else I'm okay with.
I'm okay for everything except for the car stuff, the tire, the auto sales, those ones.
It's not my decision. I'm going to defer to city council on that. It's a different, difficult decision, but, okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I would like to bring back signs, because we talked about the appearance, but we didn't talk about the quantity and how we can limit that. Because that, I mean, that's probably my failing. You know, I was okay with the sign, but I have concerns about the quantity and how many of those can, you know, how we can restrict the quantity of those so they're not all over the place.
Can we put that as a condition for staff to look into our code or Kevin to work with staff on?
Well, we can talk about it a little bit. So if, in the event that if this lit sign were allowed, right? Do we want to talk about the frequency of the change? How many seconds?
And size.
I
and
don't know
placement.
that, I mean, I don't know that we have the expertise to determine the
Right.
optimal transition length.
And I like to be friendly to the business, but I also want to be friendly to the people around it, because there's residents right across the street and they'll have to see it.
What do they do in Gilbert? How often do they transition?
Every 8 seconds.
8 seconds or 8 minutes?
8 seconds.
Wow.
That's industry standard.
You know, it's interesting, my mom lives in in Val Vista Lakes right behind there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And she says she's been to the Fat Cats, she likes it, she doesn't have any problem with the signs and whatever.
They don't notice it.
So,
Well, and again,
You don't notice it, then you don't need it.
No, even in our own county, different cities have different, requirements, so.
this is true.
I work,
Back to Washington, you're gonna see lots of neighborhoods that don't have any signs
just
at
go to
all.
Traverse
It's just
Mountain
bricks and trees.
or Thanksgiving Point, and they apparently allow that kind of, huge beacons and things like that, so.
I work with electronic signature pads that we put advertisement on. We do 5 to 8 seconds, and it's painfully long, 8 seconds or longer, believe it or not.
Again, we don't have the decision on that, but at least we've voiced our opinion.
I guess we'd like to limit it to 2 per community plan.
I thought it was 1. Is
Well,
it 2?
Well, they're asking for 2. Did we,
But there's only one.
It's only 1.
Well, there's two, one on Redwood and one on Pioneer Crossing.
Okay.
I thought for the LED, oh, okay, for the.
and I would prefer to have none, and I think there are a lot of us that would do that. But I'm not sure that when the mayor sits there and says that he likes them and he likes the pictures on them, it kind of gives you the thought that maybe it's not, that we're going to have it whether we like it or not.
There are city council members who are totally opposed.
I know, yeah, but
Okay, so before we entertain any motion, there's something I wanted to point out. On page 26 of your community plan, you have 4 turnouts on, well, actually 3 turnouts onto Redwood Road that are indicated as number 1.
Hold on.
So it's page 26 on the community plan, conceptual transportation plan. See that on the bottom? It's on the screen right here.
Okay. Oh, you're.
Okay, so see on the bottom, it has 111?
Yeah.
1 indicates the intersection that's on the top left. That intersection has a left turn, which would be a northbound turn onto Redwood Road. Is that, I mean, really, ultimately, this is UDOT that's going to do this, but I don't know that we want 3 other places where people can turn left onto Redwood Road across all that traffic. Is that what you were really wanting to do there?
It really depends on the use that goes in last phase. And it really depends what happens as we start phasing the signal at Market Street. We'll have to do a traffic study.
Right. I just wanted to point that out.
We just don't know. I mean, at this point, we don't know. That's what UDOT would have, this would meet UDOT standards if it works from a traffic study. UDOT standards and understanding that once we decide what goes in that last phase, we'll have
traffic study.
And we'll have to prove it up with.
Yeah, just to clarify on that, so you're talking about the 2111 on Redwood Road?
Correct.
That's already in the community plan.
Okay.
The change on this one I'm looking at here is
Well,
up at the
ultimately,
top, would be the top corner, top of the screen where it shows 3-4. That's 2-2 on the existing community plan. Then going down Market, going from the corner 2-4 would be
I don't have any
2.
problem with Market or Pioneer, but I
Yeah,
think it might be-
1-3-1-3-1-2 is what the,
just
as
make
far as
it
Redwood goes,
dangerous.
that's already there on Redwood.
Well, it's
already
part of the
approved.
community plan, but it's not really approved until UDOT approves it. But I thought you might want to think that that might be dangerous to turn left there.
We're not going to build those for,
Yeah, UDOT has to give approval for any access curb cuts on this state road.
the only thing we really, like I mentioned, we added 4 because those are the right in, not right out on Market Street, and we added 5, which is the
Addressing CFI.
new CFI access. Shows you how that.
Okay, did you want to say something? Please do.
Okay, so what I have is we're going to direct staff to evaluate the height of buildings in the code and see if there's any amendments or whatnot.
I missed that part, I'm going to write this.
Evaluate the height,
Okay.
the maximum height limitations in the code. See if there's anything,
That with respect to the sky ordinance, or the light ordinance?
Because right now they can go 100 for an office.
but is respect to I mean, it's the dark sky ordinance, but also
sky.
the flight path and,
Uh-huh.
Just a direction,
And
right?
FAA.
Yeah.
You're just, yeah, it's not
yeah,
part of the
just some
conditions.
direction, just, and forgive me if I'm summarizing wrong, but it seemed as if the majority of the planning commission was okay with permitting the uses that were requested, with the exception of the tire store, in this case Les Schwab, which the council should consider making a conditional use. Did I say that wrong?
say that again, please, because I just
The
haven't.
majority of the planning commission seemed okay with permitting the uses that were requested, with the exception, there was some split we were split on the tire store, which the city council should consider as a conditional use.
And to auto repair?
Well, a motion would have to
But
decide
really-
one way or the other.
Yeah. But we can,
But we can split out Les
we can
Schwab.
split out the uses. But really, I don't know if it was the majority. We had a,
Well, it's 2 to,
This electronic sign was a bigger divide.
we're back onto the conditional versus permitted uses.
Okay.
I'm not in favor of putting any of the ones that they've asked for permitted, to be permitted. I would prefer to see them as conditional use permits.
okay, you're
And the
okay.
reason,
You're right, it was 4 to 2.
The motion would be
even
all
Troy was
permitted.
okay except for the tire.
The automotive uses.
Les Schwab.
Yeah, but they had others like new car sales
So automotive in
and
general.
major auto repair, yeah.
It could be used car sales too, if you make that.
yeah, that's,
Now what do you think?
I mean, we're-
Sorry, not to put you on the spot.
Can I make a recommendation? Maybe we just, if Kevin, if this is okay, can we break up a motion into various motions so we can address each one of these at one time and then they can all vote on that? We can proceed to the next one? Next motion?
Yeah, really.
I thought we were going to do better than that and just instruct staff to figure it out.
So there's one more summary, though.
We have, that's why you have it now.
No one's told us we couldn't break up
So
things like
the
that.
final summary, just as we prepare for motions, is we were pretty split on the sign. However, I think we were all okay with limiting that to 2 per community plan. Is that,
I don't really want to see the electronic signs. I think we open a can of worms I don't want to see.
I agree there.
well, so long as we can limit it, I'm okay with it.
No, I'm not okay with limiting it. I'm not okay with it at all.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 not okay with it, and 2 that were okay. 1 said that it was okay as long as it dimmed.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
But did
I
you-
just
wait a
happened to
minute.
think
Just
we
one
have it
second.
covered.
Just 1 second. Did you finish your summary?
Well, no, with that additional clarification, it's, the Plan Commission seems against the LED signs.
It's a majority.
However, if the council were to consider that, we would hope they would limit that to,
Okay, back to you, Commissioner Steele.
We have something in our code, and it's not addressed in your community plan, that lights on a building have to be limited to 15 feet in height,
Yeah.
and that looks more than 15 feet or 16 feet.
Were they signage or were they? what
The
were they?
lights, they're building lighting. And would you mind pulling, I pulled up a lot, but I didn't pull up the light. Well, maybe I do. have
If
some
that
of
were the case, then every one of our commercial buildings is out of compliance. Walmart would be out of compliance, Smith's would be out of compliance.
They all came in before we enacted the
But Smith's, the new Smiths would be out of that compliance, because they're much taller than 15 feet.
DAP
their building
override it?
lighting. This was part of our dark sky ordinance, and it's in our code.
Maybe DAP
Oh,
overrides
I'm
it?
not suggesting it's not, I'm just saying that the current Smiths is, what, 35 feet probably?
I'm not talking about signs,
No,
I'm
she's
talking about
right.
lighting.
We denied Tractor Supply from having lights that were higher.
Yep.
Again, does the DAP override that?
Well, does the DAP,
The DAP doesn't give development standards. It's really a general plan saying, these are the different place types you can have, these are the types of parks you can have. The DAP doesn't contain the development standards. That's what the community plan and the village plan really nailed it.
Well, I thought the DAP does have lighting. I thought the DAP allowed developers to override the code in lighting. Because we had that discussion last time, as far as what kind of lighting that they want to put in.
I'd have to get into it then.
I didn't see it last night, but I kind of flipped through it a little quickly. But it's something that we either need to address, we don't want to let everybody think we didn't think about it,
Which one was that specifically?
but that the building lighting. I know what they have proposed goes with what they're doing, but what do we need to do to circumvent our code? Or do we need to have Boyer put in their community plan something that would allow that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the community plan is for. Just, for instance, the LED signs, you can't do it anywhere else, but you're considering approving it just for this community plan. You can do the same thing with the building lights that they comply with. You're talking about the ones on Fat Cats, the LED or the green lights. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure they're higher than.
Yeah, you'd have to put in language that says lighting complies with the architectural elevations. It's not subject to the other parts of the normal Title 19 stuff.
Are you willing to do that?
Let me make sure I understand what David proposed, is we would put a provision that the elevations would control in this event in lieu of the...
For building lighting?
Yeah. That makes sense. I think that's a good...
I mean, in the elevations, I didn't see any, like, sconce lightings around anything. I just think you have the green and over the entrance. That's the extent of your building lighting.
Right. Have we discussed this enough that we can formulate a motion? I think we're still working on one over here.
Okay.
He's writing down all the
3 or 1?
current conditional uses that were proposed as
And
permitted.
one of the things that I'm concerned about, that I wanted the Fat Cats to come back, and it's something we need to kind of think about philosophically, is we require that the parking lot lights be dimmed half at 11 o'clock. And we're going to have kids coming out of the theater into not as well lit as we might like our kids to come out in.
Was it 11 o'clock or was it before, like a certain time before or after the business closes?
They have to be off after the business closes. But they,
Yeah.
as I say, I've got some of the, no, I don't either. Anyway, I think we need to think about that. And they're not going to have any person there for security. And I asked that question last night. And so...
Yeah, the community plan does say that lighting has to comply with Title 19. So in that case, yes, half of the parking lot lights would have to dim.
At what time?
Let me look that up here.
At closing?
Yeah, I'll look it up here.
I thought it was 11 o'clock.
Is that
or 1 hour
half?
after closing.
Is the half of the lights dispersed throughout, or is it in a section? Because I believe Fat Cats is going to be the only thing open until 1 in the morning, but maybe that changes because Fat Cats is there. Maybe some restaurant wants to stay open later too.
I think about kids coming out into a darkened, and I wouldn't be too happy with my child. In fact,
I thought it was till a certain time after closing.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right here, get you the
That's when they go
exact
off.
language.
but it's half at 11, I think, is the way it reads.
All right, yeah, it's not there. Okay, time, where do we got? Okay, hours, 1 hour after closing or by 11 p.m., whichever is earlier, so it would be 11 p.m. in this case. Businesses must turn off at least 50% of building lighting and lighting fixtures in surface parking lots and on top decks of parking structures. However, those lighting fixtures turned off may be set to function utilizing a motion detector system. Lights may be turned back on 1/2 hour prior to the first employee shift.
But if,
So
but isn't,
by 11 o'clock, they'd have to cut half.
but by default, if it's not in the community plan, it has to follow Title 19
Right, the
anyway,
only thing in the community plan that varies from Title 19 right now is the style of parking lot light.
Yeah, so I think it's actually covered. No, because if it's not in there, it already has to comply, they have to comply with Title 19.
Well, what she's worried is because half of them are going to be turned off by 11 p.m., Fat Cats doesn't get out till 1, so you've got 2 hours where kids are going to be going into a parking lot that it's going to have half lighting.
Yeah, but
Could we change
half
that?
lighting, is that big a deal?
Now, it does say they can have motion detectors. I don't know if I've never seen a motion detector on a tall parking lot light. I guess it could happen.
No, our street lights in our neighborhood
Do they?
yeah, they have motion light.
I don't have kids, so it's not my children I'm worried about, but I am concerned.
Various parking lot activities?
Could it be as simple?
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah.
Could
And
it-
we happen to have a daughter who
Yeah.
went to a movie and stayed for the credits, and she was attacked as she went out. and it was a fairly dark area. And so I know it happens. So that's the reason I brought it up. I like our dark sky ordinance, and it has served us well. But in a case like this, I wonder if you need to put something in your community plan that would help cover that with motion detectors, or that they can leave them on and then till an hour after closing.
I'm wondering if it could be as simple, I think, David, you said the language is the earlier of 11 o'clock or 1 hour after closing. Is that what it says right now?
No, it's whatever earlier, so in your case, it would be 11 o'clock.
So if we changed it, just reverse that to say
It was later.
later of 11 o'clock or 1 hour after closing, I think would cover all those businesses. I don't know if that's would
I don't know
work.
if anybody else agrees with me or not.
Well, no, we do. I mean, we need to, security is a big issue, life safety. We would not want to have all the lights turned off at 11 o'clock if we still have patrons in the theater. That would be a big
They only go
concern for us.
half at that point.
Now, when you say have to, if you're doing typical parking lot lights that have two,
Yeah,
you could still have every pole with a light, but you cut off one of those two lights.
yeah.
So you're still going to have, I think, some acceptable lighting.
Yeah, SEPTED
Yeah, I don't, that's-
policies really recommend lighting as safety. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just equated. I mean, you look at all the studies, I think it's something we should look at.
I agree.
Okay,
I'm not all negative.
yes, please.
Gentlemen, thank you for being patient with us. These are complex issues. As I prepare to make a motion, I just wanted to ask the Planning Commission on the bubble of permitted uses, if the following uses encompass automobile services: automobile repair, automobile sales, tire sales, and the question I have is, full-service car wash considered an automobile service?
I believe they already, do they have it permitted for automobile car,
Condition.
full-service car wash?
Well, I guess my question is what defines a full service, because Quick Quack is
Quack.
they're a full service car wash already.
Is that a permitted or conditional use? And I believe it was conditional, wasn't
And
it?
they
Yeah,
did
that's the
come
reason we
before
thought-
us.
That's the reason we
That's why they
thought.
don't have the orange garbage cans
Right.
and the,
Troy, was there any other ones, Commissioner Cunningham?
No.
Okay, I'm prepared to make a motion, if I may.
I'm okay to listen for one.
Are you putting car wash in as an automotive use?
Yes, ma'am?
Thank you.
Are you going to highlight again those things you want us to look at that's not part of the motion? Do you have that list?
This is a single motion on permitted use.
Oh,
No more harassment to the person who's going to potentially give a motion. I'll entertain a motion now.
I move that we approve the permitted uses as specified in the staff report, excepting automobile repair, automobile sales, tire sales, and full-service car wash, which will remain as conditional uses.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Would you like me to repeat that?
Yes.
I move that we approve the permitted uses as outlined in the staff report in the bubble diagram, excepting automobile repair, automobile sales, tire sales, and full-service car wash, which will remain as conditional uses.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
So now,
And they said they were okay with that.
okay, I'll second it.
We have a second.
I have a question.
I also have a question. Please, Commissioner.
Equipment sales and service.
That's not in card.
It really is. It could be boat repair, it could be RV repair, it could be Caterpillar repair, it could be any one of those things. Or, as I said, it could be computers, but it's not specified, and that's a large hole to go through.
You also didn't talk about typewriters. Is this something you wanted to consider in your motion?
Or should you say?
How do we consider that?
Did you want to make equipment sales a conditional use?
Non-automotive
And-
equipment sales?
That question's up to you. You're the,
Clarifying point, I guess, are you trying to block like vehicular?
We don't even know what that means. Let's just delete it. I'm not sure what it means either. It's in your code, but we don't know what it means, so we put it in. But let's just take it out.
We don't care.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I was concerned though, because equipment sales could be iPads or tablets or cell phones or anything. Anything could be deemed equipment, so
You
if
mean
you're
outdoor
limiting
equipment
that, we've already
sales?
blown through that because theoretically Smith's is already selling equipment. So I mean, it depends on how narrow you're trying to define it, but if you're talking about like trailers and rolling equipment, then, you know, that's one thing, whereas if you're taking the literal interpretation down to the typewriter level.
The question is an equipment use conditional or permitted? Do we allow them to just do whatever they want with the equipment?
Conditional, we
So
don't
that's
care.
Seeing the
really-
applicant is okay with deleting that as a permitted use, I am perfectly fine with that.
Is the second okay with that?
I am, yes.
Okay, I have an additional question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, but I do.
It's defined in the code as rental tools, lawn and garden equipment, including outdoor storage and incidental maintenance.
We would want that conditional.
My question is, I would like you to make sure that this motion is with regards to item number 6, the public hearing, community plan, major amendment, and village plan. It was not
Thank you. Let me
specified.
amend my motion, if I may. I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the city council concerning community plan major amendment and village plan 2 for the crossing located at southeast corner of Market Street and Pioneer Crossing. For the permitted uses in the staff report in the bubbly thing on page 3 that lists the permitted uses, with the exception of automobile repair, automobile sales, tire sales, full-service car wash, and equipment sales and service, which will remain as conditional uses.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any other questions on the motion as stated?
What two were you, that will stay as permitted?
All the ones except the ones I listed.
What are they?
So they would be
Convenience store, fast food combination, fitness center, refueling stations, retail box, entertainment, movie, bowling, arcades.
I have a problem with one of them, and it is an automotive, for all practical purposes, and that's the convenience store and fast food, with the fast food, because it's going to come with a refueling station. So, yeah, we've already got refueling station in there, but we haven't allowed the fast food convenience.
Actually, they do sell convenience out at the gas pumps at Smith's. They have some soda machines, they have
I
chips,
stopped
they
there
have small
for-
stuff out there, yeah. So, I mean, that cat's already left.
Okay,
My motion did not include refueling stations as a conditional use. That is a
I
permitted-
understand, but it was the convenience store that,
So the question is, do you want to add that or not?
I do not.
Okay. Favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Commissioner Kilgore, nay. Okay, is that all of the motions for this?
No, oh yes, for the conditional use portion, yes.
Okay. I'll entertain any other motions. Just the evening. Were there others?
There's a potential motion on LED lighting, but since I was in favor of those, as long as they were limited, I will not be making a motion for the negative recommendation.
and Kevin's not here. I'll take a shot at it. I move to recommend denial of the crossing electronic sign proposal for 2 electronic signs, and the finding would be that it does not meet our code, our Title 19 code, and I feel it's a health, safety, welfare issue because of the bright lights.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion?
Yes, could you repeat it one more time, please? I didn't get the first part of the motion.
I move to recommend denial of the crossing community plan, which deals with the electronic signs, and that the finding is, I hope somebody wrote it down.
I got the rest of it.
Health, safety. Yeah.
I do not believe the motion has changed. Any other questions on the motion?
Yes, Mark, in this type of plan, does it have to meet Title 19?
Well, so I was looking in the DAP, and the DAP allows for the community plan to establish sign codes, is my interpretation. I'm not an attorney. But I think that it allows for you to interpret your sign code and write your sign code based on my review of it. So you can change it. So you're denying it based on Title 19, but the DAP and the community plan process allows for an amendment. So fundamentally, you're referring back to 19 and using 19 as your justification because it's not allowed under Title 19.
Well,
they have the ability to make the request. I think you're very clear on what you're wanting to do.
Title 19 and safety and health and...
Well, that's the finding that she's recommended as part of that, so.
But they haven't proposed, as part of their community plan, am I wrong? Did you put electronic signs in your community plan?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, I stand corrected then.
And just for clarification, Dave, what was the foot candle that they were going to dim it to?
0.3
Just so you know.
above ambient light.
Just so you know, the headlight of an automobile is 0.3 foot candles at 40 feet. I mean, just to put it in perspective, this is not like Lehigh. It's a totally different sign than Lehigh. It's really about as bright as a headlight.
And those, for us who have vision issues, those are blinding at times. And so...
However, it is...
Help you see.
It is the standard.
It is a standard.
Okay.
Are there any other?
It's about the same as just an automobile.
Are there any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have 2 nays. Commissioner Brush?
Chapman.
Totally tired. Commissioner Chapman, I'm sorry. Vice Chair. Ready for bed. Okay, we still have the village plan to deal with.
I just have a question. If this becomes an issue with Fat Cats that they decide not to go over the sign, is this something you would reconsider?
Well, we don't have the decision at this point. Basically, all we're doing is forwarding a positive or negative recommendation to the city council. They make that decision.
And they override us regularly.
They have legislative authority. We do not.
Oh, I can do that.
Say that one more time, Mark.
So as you make your motion on the village plan, it's, hypothetically, it would
Have
be
to mention
approve the village plan and community plan amendments with the exception of those things that you've just clarified.
Well, a question on that. Since we are recommending that tire sales not be a permitted use, then will that cover not approving Les Schwab in the village plan?
So your recommendation is that it be a conditional use. So that's the recommendation that you just came together and made. So, I mean, just clarify, per the items that you've just discussed. We've got a lot of notes on what exactly your motions and counter motions and things were. So, as you go through it, you've got the idea of what you're going for.
I'm ready to take a shot at a motion.
Good for you.
I move to recommend approval of the crossing amended community plan and new village plan 2 with the finding and conditions of below, and keeping in mind the 2 aforementioned motions regarding permitted uses and LED sign usage.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Do we have a question on the motion?
Yes, would Commissioner Brush be willing to add an additional condition that the applicant reflect the
Light.
reverse the lighting?
So I'd like to amend my motion to reflect the turning off of the lights from the current language in code, which says 11 or an hour after close, whichever is earlier, to 11 or an hour after close, whichever is later.
Good job.
Is that okay with the second?
Okay, second.
Okay, I have one other question.
Yes.
You said keeping in mind the previous 2 motions. Keeping in mind, I was wondering if you would revise that to
Change the language
except
to,
for
with the exception of the 2
motions that
aforementioned.
were passed. Okay, is the second okay with that?
With the exception of?
So basically, she's made a motion to forward a positive recommendation for the village plan, except for except encompassing the items that we've covered in the previous 2 motions.
Which were the electric
Conditional versus
signs
permitted.
and the automobile restrictions.
We already
in the
forwarded
permitted
motions.
uses.
Yeah, okay.
So you're okay with
Yes.
that? Okay. All in favor? Oh, sorry, any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you.
We appreciate it. You didn't give us a chance to answer all the questions, but thanks anyway. I think you came right to where the decision we were trying to get to, so we appreciate your input. We really think this will be a great addition to the community and look forward to working with you on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Thank you, staff.
May I?
I'll entertain a motion on item 7.
I move that we approve the Planning Commission minutes of January 25th, 2018.
We have a motion
Second?
and a second. Any question on the motion? All
Favor?
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Number 8, reports of action. Number 9, commission comments. I have a comment. Historically, a long time ago, before I was here, planning commission meetings were at 6 p.m. Somewhere along history, somebody decided to change those to 6:30. I propose that we move them back to 6. I've talked to a couple of you. I haven't talked to the rest of you. Do any of you have any problem with having the meeting start at 6? We can get out here a little earlier.
Can I get a 5, 5, 5, and wait, 4, 4?
We actually have
I don't
jobs.
do auctions.
I would totally be in favor of it being at 6 if logistics worked.
I'm retired. I can be here at 2.
So I actually work till 6, but I think I might be able to make it work on commission weeks.
Tell them you're
to
doing your
leave a
civic
little-
duty and have to leave.
I work in, actually, public office, so
There you go.
Let's
double duty.
Let's table that then until the next
I'll
meeting.
figure it
We'll-
out.
We'll talk
Yeah.
about it when you've got some answers. But
Okay.
anybody else have a problem with that?
And I've already said I'm okay with it.
I would be okay with it as well.
Oh, how about city staff?
I'm already here, so.
I'm good for earlier too, but I'm downtown, so. All right, director's report? Nothing?
Do you want to tell us what happened at the council? For those that didn't watch it, did any of us?
I did actually watch it. It passed unanimously.
Yes. Evans did. And Perrell?
Pirelli passed, of course, the school district passed, flying colors,
Mallard Bay,
that 12 months. All 5 of us had an item, what was?
school. Well, I just thought, I happened to watch it, and
Is council not the second and fourth Tuesdays?
but the way the,
First and third Tuesday.
First and third Tuesdays.
February and March always have the same, all line together. March,
All right, we adjourn.
You said you're leaving Wednesday?
yeah, we were. And they asked me to write language, and so I did, and then